Welcome to Quantum RX, the podcast that teaches you how to move beyond stuck emotions and trauma for mind, body, and spirit healing. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Davis. I'm sure you have noticed that life feels much heavier lately. And in this heaviness, we are responding in ways, not all of us, but many of us, that are contributing to the divisiveness. And this divisiveness separates us. And that is what I believe is what whoever is pulling the strings or, is behind all of this wants. They want this to happen, right? They want this division because when there's division and it's us versus, them or me versus you, they erode the fabric of our society. They erode the fabric of our existence, our relationships, everything. They basically erode our human existence. And that is how they have power. And I've been sitting with this for a long time. I'm assuming if you've been listening to the podcast for a while that you know that I'm a very reflective and contemplative person. And everything that's been happening lately has been bothering me. And I would say this isn't even like it's come to a head more recently. I feel like we are in a big time of transition, but there's a lot that's been happening. Like this has been kind of a slow roll that's been peaking lately. But I would say that 10, 15 years ago, this whole division was starting to, show itself. And I really do think that this is part of a bigger picture. We're being challenged in humanity right now to see if we can show up. But it has gotten me thinking, I have seen online where some people are basically saying, I'm not going to buy into this. I'm not going to hate people just because they don't think what I do. I'm going to choose to respect people, even if we don't have the same, philosophies and values. And I think that this is really important. I'm seeing more and more of that. And again, this might be a reflection of the people that I know, but I am still seeing some of the people who are on the side of hate and anger and divisiveness. And that I have no space for that in my life. I'm going to put my effort into being the change that I want to see in the world and healing the world. And it brings me to the question that I've been sitting with for a while. How do we contribute to this healing of the world? And how do we start to come back together so we can all rise and be one together? What I have come to, and you probably have heard in podcasts, the podcast in the last month or two, it's all about personal responsibility and personal leadership. This is what I have landed on. It starts with us. It starts with our personal leadership. How do you show up in the world? How do you show up every day in every role that you play, whether you're a parent, a child, a spouse, a partner, a mentor, a friend, a boss, an employee, a caretaker, a whatever, all of the different roles that you play on a daily basis. How are you showing up in each one of those roles, right? But also, how are you showing up within and to yourself? One of my philosophies is as within, so without. And so what that means is what is happening on the inside of you will be reflected on the outside in how you interact with the world and other people. And that is a pretty profound level of responsibility when you think about it, right? And today we are going to cover just the surface of what self-responsibility and heart-led leadership looks like. The 6 areas that you need to consider and address for yourself so you can show up as a responsible, heart-led, respectful, grateful person in this world that contributes to the healing and the coming together and not to the divisiveness. And we're going to talk about, once we know better, we can do better and what that looks like. And I'm also going to give you a few updates on the direction of the podcast, because as we evolve in real time, the podcast is, evolving too. So I'm going to give you some updates on that as well. If you're curious as to if you have any stored emotions or trauma that might be causing your illness, preventing you from achieving your goals, or even just showing up as the best, most authentic version of yourself, I invite you to take my free stored emotions and trauma quiz, and you will find that link in the show notes. All right. So let's get back to this. Let's get back to just all the crap that has been going on. In the last podcast, I had mentioned, what had happened with Charlie Kirk. And in that same day, there was a shooting at Evergreen High School. And my husband and I we used to live there. That's where my son was born, not at the high school, but in the town of Evergreen, Colorado. And my husband and I had a practice there together, and we trained athletes. We trained their swimmers. We did the dry land training. And my heart was just breaking when I saw that, and then also I had a friend who posted about something. There was like an active shooter issue in a park in Austin, Texas. And that all happened on the same day. And as I've mentioned before, I'm not a news person. I really don't I don't think that the news is good for us. 99% of the information is negative. 99% of it is I shouldn't say 99%, but a lot of it is opinions that are being force fed to you that play in the background of your subconscious mind. And then you start spitting those things out. I see that happen all the time. I'm not going to say who this person is. It's not somebody in my immediate household, but it is a family member of mine. And this person I always call this person, I'm not going to say whether it's a he or she, is a regurgitator. Whenever this person hears something on the news or sees it online, just actively regurgitates it. And I sit there and I wonder, and I kind of have questioned, how much of that is coming from you? What are your thoughts? And what are just what you're regurgitating from what you've heard or read? So it's all of that type of stuff, and why we really, really need to be protective of what we consume as, thoughts, what we read, what we hear, the people that we interact with and we're around. All of that matters. That's going to shape a lot of how you are in many aspects of life until you've done a lot of the inner work, and you can sit there and be aware and say, if somebody's saying something you don't agree with or don't like, and they're getting really negative, you can actively say in your mind, I don't accept this. I don't want that. This is yours. What's yours is yours, and what's mine is mine. That's a good way to kind of get away from that. But a lot of people aren't at that place or have that awareness to be doing that. So we need to get back to a place where, we are kind in general, respectful to each other. We act with a certain level of decorum and decency to each other, face to face and online and in our cars, because I feel like on a daily basis, I see a lot of ugly, and it is starting to really, it bothers me. It bothers me a lot. And again, like I said, I'm very contemplative and reflective, and I'm like, how do we change this? It all starts with us. It starts with ourselves, and it starts with self-responsibility and heart-led leadership. And I personally feel like the self-responsibility transforms into heart-led leadership. And this is a lot of what I do with the people that I work with. I always say that I have a gift for balancing the practical with kind of the spiritual, or the practical with the emotional. I can guide people through whatever, form that looks like for them, whether we're dealing with them we're working with them on a personal level, a professional level, or both. But this is something that I'm very good at working, with people through the nuance of this. And as I have worked with people over the last 20 years, but especially the last 3 to 5 years, the people who I'm doing this deep inner work with, these are all areas that we are addressing. And what's interesting is like, even the people who I work with professionally, I have worked with people who have gone basically like increased. I'll give you an example. Somebody that I worked with that they were charging, this was in the last like year and a half, 2 years. They were charging like $1,000 for their service on a monthly basis when I first started working with them. And now they're charging $5,000 a month, and they are killing it and doing like all of this amazing work. And yes, we do sometimes talk about like the practicalities of business, but it's usually more like me reflecting back to them. Why did you make this decision? Even though your mind was saying no, your mouth still said yes. Why did that happen? Usually it comes back to beliefs, mindset, trauma, things that you haven't dealt with. And then we go deal with those things. So it's very interesting to watch that. Some people like come to me to work with just like the kind of personal kind of health, personal development, and sometimes spiritual side. And then some people come to do that and do kind of things are not happening, well in their business. Or I shouldn't say that. Some people are successful that work with me and they just feel like they're lacking, or their sense of purpose isn't there, or they're not feeling fulfilled, or they have all the money, but they're, feeling empty inside. There's lots of different reasons. Or conversely, sometimes they feel amazing and they're like a very put together person and they're happy and they're fulfilled, but the finances are not happening. So there's some kind of disconnectedness, and misalignment there. So we're getting into all of that type of stuff. So it looks different for every person, but at the core, we are looking at 6 different areas. And these are the areas we need to essentially master first. The areas of leadership we need to master in order to show up as a great, parent, child, spouse, partner, mentor, friend, boss, employee, caretaker, all the things I mentioned above. We need to master these first for ourselves so then we can disseminate that and show up as that person and give to the world in that way. That is how I honestly believe we are going to heal this divisiveness. And the 6 areas are these: health, finances, work, career, and I would also say purpose, but purpose could also fall into the next area, which is personal development, your relationships, and then spirituality. Those are the 6 areas. And those are the 6 areas that I work with people on. We analyze these when I first start working with people, and we grade them and we rank them. We grade them on how well you feel like you're doing on each one of these levels now. And we also rank it like what's most important to you now, like which of the 6. So health, finances, work, career, personal, like relationships, personal development, and spirituality. We rank those too, because as you are growing and developing and healing and doing all the things, the rank will change, because typically like what's most important to you now is often something that you're lacking, or it's at the bottom. That's kind of what happens, what I see with people. It either kind of funnels itself to the top or it funnels itself to the bottom because it's something you're ignoring. And I'm good at teasing all of that out. So we work through all of these things, but this is what I have people do. Health. Let's just go quickly, because what I'm going to do is eventually we're going to break these down. But on a health aspect, like, are you in good health? Do you prioritize your health? Do you view your body as a temple? Because that is going to tell me a lot about you and how you are, because your body needs to be in a healthy place in order to show up for yourself and to show up for all of the other roles in your life and to show up in the world, especially if you own a business. Finances, that's another area to consider. And it's not just how much money you make or how much money you have. It's like, what are you doing with your money? What is the flow? What is the energetics of the money? Are you responsible with that money? Do you have what are your habits? Like, do you make a lot of money, but you're also spending a lot of money? Are you very thrifty? Do you kind of hold on to your money like Scrooge? It's like, there's lots of things we can look at with regard to that. And each one of these is like a pretty big deep dive. So that's what I'm working with people. This is what we're looking at. Work and career. And I would also say purpose. Is your work fulfilling? Do you feel like it is driving your purpose? Is your work a means to an end for your life? Are you okay with that? Are you not okay with that? There's lots of things, we can look at with regard to this. But especially, I should say all of the people I work with are entrepreneurs or business owners or practitioners. So they all own their own entity. And that even gives us a bigger kind of diving board to have to jump off of, into the water and like navigate and swim through, is your, all of these kind of areas of your business as well. Like looking at this personally, because you are your business, whether or not you want to think that you are your business. And when you have things going on personally, it's going to show up professionally. It will show up in the things that you ignore in your business, the things that you don't want to do. It will show up as procrastination. It will show up, as, basically lack of fulfillment and lack of feeling like driven or having a sense of purpose. There's so many different dynamics that we can get into there, but that's like when we're talking about working career, like, does it, like on the very high end, does it make you happy? Does it make you feel fulfilled? Are you following your sense of purpose? Does it drain you? Does it drain you? Is it eating away at your soul? I used to feel that way when I was in the corporate world. I found it very soul sucking. So there are a lot of things and, things that I analyze with people when we're looking at all of this. Relationships. How is first and foremost your relationship with yourself? Do you accept yourself? Do you love yourself? How do you feel about yourself? Are you self-critical? There's all of that, but then your relationships. The relationships with your family. If you have a spouse or a partner, if you have children, if you have parents, siblings, all of that. How are your friendships? How are your relationships with if you're a boss, your employees? If you work for somebody else, how is your relationship with your leaders or superiors? Do you take care of somebody else? How is that relationship? If you are caring for somebody who's sick, do you resent that person? Like, there's a lot to get into the dynamics of the relationships. But number one, and what we address first, is your relationship with yourself, because it's really hard to have good, solid, respectful relationships with other human beings when you don't feel that way about yourself. Because like I said before, as within, so without. If you don't respect yourself or like yourself or love yourself, you're going to feel that way about other people. And you may say that's not true, but it's very true. It is very, very true. It is very hard to love and respect and connect with other human beings when you don't feel that way yourself. And then personal development. If you are addressing these 6 areas, you are obviously developing as a person, but that personal development is going to look different in different stages of your life, right? Depending upon where you are. And so that self-growth, like, are you trying to become a better parent? Are you trying to become a better individual so that you can show up and serve more people? Are you trying to, clear all of the kind of the mind baggage and the emotional baggage and the trauma so that you can be a better version of yourself again and show up better in the world? There's a lot of areas that you can touch on in personal development, and it's going, just like the journey, it's going to, take you to different places and different areas. But as long as you're continually doing something and you have awareness and you are self-reflective, that personal development is going to be continuing on and on. basically, as long as you're human and as long as you're willing to address this stuff. And then spirituality. That is something that is very personal to every person. But what I will say is having a belief in a higher power is essential. As I do this, the more I see, it's interesting. I work with people who say that they're atheist or agnostic, but when you get down to it, most people believe in something. Most people believe in something. And most of the time it is a higher power of sorts, whether it's, you want to label it, like I always say, God, divine, spirit, source, universe, creator. There are infinite names that have been, labeled over time. But having that connection and belief and just that feeling that you have when you believe in a higher power are really important and essential for, having a happy, fulfilling, peaceful, grateful, loving life, right? That is a really, really important piece of the puzzle. And it was really interesting because I have worked with I shouldn't say a lot, maybe about 25% of the people I've worked with have been like in that agnostic atheist realm. And by the time we're done working with each other, they will say, you know what, like this has opened my eyes and I know that there's something out there greater than me and I want to contribute to it and I want to be a part of it, that connectedness, that oneness. And when you feel that way, it's so much easier to do all of the other pieces of the puzzle, be on top of your, the responsibility and the leadership of your health, finances, work, relationships, and personal development, because you have a spiritual team, right? You have a spiritual team around you, whoever it is for you, your guides, your guardian angels, God, saints. There's all sorts of places we could go with this, but we all have these 6 areas that we need to address. And it starts with us. And it is literally doing an honest inventory of your health, of your finances, of your kind of work, career, purpose, relationships, personal development, and spirituality. How would you rate? I would say rate. I usually use a 1 to 5, like 1 being very low, 5 meaning you're killing it. How would you rate all of those areas of your life? I would say to get yourself to a really good place, I think having 4s and 5s in most of those areas is important. I find that when I am struggling with an area, it gets down to like a 3 or a 2. I can't say that I ever get down to a 1 in areas because I tend to be pretty on top of things and I don't drop the ball, but I have had some where I'm just like, ooh, that's a 2 right now. And that doesn't feel very good. So I'm out of alignment somewhere, with regard to my self-responsibility and leadership. And then I also do the ranking, where am I at right now? Like for me, it's interesting because when I rank it, I often find it hard because a lot of these are like 1A, 1B, 1C for me. Kind of for me, the spirituality and personal development are very intertwined. So for me, a lot of times those are 1 and 2 or 1A and 1B because those are very important to me. Health is also very important to me because it's one of the foundations. And then often, you've got finances. I would say for me, relationships, then finances, and then work, career. And that's not to say because if I were to rank all those right now, they are all going to be 4s and 5s for the most part. There's a few areas that I'm working on a little bit. I would say relationships is probably a 4 now. Maybe a couple weeks ago, I would have said a 3, depending upon what relationships we're talking about. And finances, I think I had mentioned this in another podcast recently, was that I feel like I'm responsible for the obvious, but like getting into some of the deeper nuanced areas of finance, I would have ranked that a 3 too a couple weeks ago. It's probably maybe I'd say a 3.5 now. I wouldn't say quite a 4, but like giving yourself a gauge on all of these. And I'm going to start talking about these a lot more because and I'm going to say this is kind of going to guide the framework through which the podcast is going to evolve, because when we all know better, we can do better, right? once you know something, it's hard to ignore it, right? And for me, I feel I see a lot of disconnect out in the world. I see a lot of people saying words and their actions don't align with those words. And I really feel like that the as within, so without is very important right now. You know, how you are internally is how you're going to show up in the world. And then also that once you know better, you can do better that's really important too. And a lot of the foundation of this is knowledge, awareness, openness, grace, having grace with people. Because when it comes down to it, we as human beings have so many more similarities than, things that are different. And the world we're living in right now is trying to magnify those few differences. But I would challenge you to get into a room with other human beings and face them face to face. And when you can see that person and look them in the eye and feel their energy, we're all human. And most of us just want to be loved and acknowledged and heard and seen for who we are, for authentically who we are, not any of the masks that we're wearing. And I mean, truthfully, we all just want to be loved and feel safe. And so many of the bigger mechanisms and pieces of the world right now are trying to tear that apart. And I would challenge you to contribute to that change. Are there places where you're judging other people because of fears that you have or things you dislike in yourself? If those are the case, go to the last episode of the podcast. And, that we talk about just about that and how to address that. The last 2 episodes, actually. You will see that where the direction of the podcast and how it's going to be moving is going to be about heart-led leadership and self-responsibility. And that's not to say that like the quantum healing and the energetic aspect is not important to me. But like I said, what I have found is that something that I'm very good at is bridging and marrying the practical with this, emotional, spiritual, energetic side, because it's all present and it's all important. And at different times, you're going to need a little bit more of one than the other. And that is normal, because the people who spend all of their time, kind of in quantum world or, energetic world or constantly meditating, this is again, my opinion, that's kind of avoiding reality. And I know, because I've kind of been there before in the past where I'm like, oh, I'm all chill. I'm one. A lot of it, you can have the spiritual bypassing. You can have just ignoring things. I am not ignorant to all the things that are going on in the world. I am well aware of what's going on in Europe, and especially Eastern Europe and the Middle East. I am well aware of all that. I just choose not to let it consume me and let my energy be sucked into it and choosing sides. I would rather work on myself and be the change that I wish to see in the world and help facilitate that and facilitate coming together and the oneness. And so you're going to see the podcast is going to be changing directions into that realm at some point. It probably will change its name again. And if that bothers you, I'm sorry. You can choose not to follow me. That's your choice. But this is what happens when you are healing and evolving and growing in real time. You have gotten to see the evolution for me from, kind of thriving mama to this quantum RX to where I'm at now. And I know that because I have shed so many layers and really embodied my authentic self, that I know that this is where I need to be and where everything that's going to be happening and moving forward in all of my work is going. And I wanted to share that with you because I always, I'm always as honest I can be, given the moment that I'm in, and that is where everything's going. You're also going to see some other sides of me. I feel like for the longest time I was showing up as, the first, practitioner, somebody who was like a health expert, somebody who was like mentoring people in like mind, body, spirit type of stuff and helping people through those transitions and healing and that growth. But like I said, like I know that there are many, many other parts of me, and you're going to be seeing more of that come, the future episodes of the podcast where I'm integrating other things of my life. Like for instance, American football, for those of you who are in other countries, American football is something that is like a part of me. My son now plays football. I'm going to talk more about kind of the evolution of what that looked like, because there was a long time when I said over my dead body, will my child play football? And now here we are. Because I think that football actually is an awesome sport on so many levels, but really, really on embodying self responsibility and personal leadership and learning to deal with adversity and, challenges. And there's so many things, so many great lessons that we can get from that sport, all sports, but I'd say particularly football. American football has its own, nuances. And so you're going to see more conversation and talk about that. How I often use a lot of analogies when I work with people, and I will use football analogies quite a bit. So I'm going to be bringing that into the role in the podcast, because I think it definitely relates back to a lot of these 6 areas that we touched on. You're going to be seeing a lot more into the, just the reality of like what my life might look like on a day to day. Also, there's going to be more of, I share a lot of that with you, but aspects that I don't always share. Like I said, like my love of football. Like I love football. On Saturdays, that's what we watch all day, because I'm more of a college girl than a NFL girl. But as my son is getting more into the NFL, like I'm paying more attention to it. I used to just kind of have it on in the background. So I'll be talking about that stuff too. We're going to be talking a lot more about intentionally talking about what's happening with regard to divisiveness and how we can counteract that, with love and respect and grace and many of those things. So that is where everything is going, because I'm feeling a very strong calling to show up in the world as this person, as the person who's going to help be a piece of the change in solving the problem. So I'm excited for everything that's going to be happening. And I hope that you choose to stay and listen and grow with me, because we need some healing in the world. And I definitely want to be a part of the change. And I would love for you to join me. And as always, I am sending you all so much love. I know that it's heavy right now and there's a lot going on, but sending you so much love until next time.
If you made it this far, I truly appreciate you. Remember, knowledge is just the beginning. Taking action is what truly sparks change. If you're overwhelmed and don't have enough energy to make it through the day, I invite you to book a free 20-minute coaching call with me. It's a no-obligation chat where we can discuss your health goals and how I might be able to help you achieve them. Visit the link in the episode description to book that call. Until next time, keep striving for wellness, and remember, you have the power to not just survive, but thrive in motherhood.